When you think of national parks, you think of wildlife. The sight of an animal roaming free is a thrill few ever forget. Wild National Parks takes a walk on the wild side through bear country. Goes one-on-one with a rattler. Follows the flow of the fastest moving land mammal in the Western Hemisphere. Raises a gentle giant. And gets a little too close for comfort. Ow! In the next hour, we'll find out just what it takes to nurture generation after generation. Along the Alaska Peninsula, waves crash up against a land of snow-capped mountains, pristine waters, and glacial melt. Katmai National Park spreads over hundreds of miles of rugged coastline, where whales breach, and an otter twists and turns in the sun. Overhead, a bald eagle soars. Yet Katmai is most famous for its land-loving brown bears. These awe-inspiring giants have come to symbolize a majestic place. Along the stormy bays of the Shelikof Strait, this top predator moves about undisturbed. And the bear watching is unrivaled. To get there isn't easy. There are no roads. One stepping off point is the picturesque and offbeat seaside town of Homer. Along the spit, bears are part of the local lore. From here, a float plane is the ticket to the Katmai coast. As the scenery changes, it's an incredible ride over bays and beaches and coastal rivers to spectacular backcountry that's worth all the effort to get there. Emerald Air has been bringing people and bears safely together for over 20 years. Before you ever see a bear, there are signs of them. Abundant food, combined with a Katmai population of some 2,000 bears, creates a phenomenon. Bears here are more tolerant of each other and more tolerant of people. They've habituated, meaning they tend to ignore us as a species.
One of the things that happens in a close situation like this, though, is as long as there's no reason for the bears to have association to people, they pretty much view us as a tree or a rock in the landscape. A big misconception about bears is sort of the wolves and the Red Riding Hood type of effect. And then a bear will walk by and, oh, there's a bear. What do we do? And then the bear walks away and you see their mind changing in terms of, oh wow, the bear wasn't interested in us.
Getting over your fear doesn't mean you can move freely through bear country. But according to bear guide Chris Day, there are ways to avoid trouble.
The three mistakes that people make that get them in trouble with bears are: number one, surprising a bear. The second mistake they make is moving closer to a bear. And the third mistake they make is backing up from a bear.
Bears are curious. If you're watching them, they may watch you. So hold your ground.
Bears are bullies. Bears love to move things. You'll see it out here with the bears. There's just something in a bear's nature that likes to make things move. So if they can get you to move, that's encouraging that bold behavior. And the more you back up, the bolder the bear gets. And then you can trigger that predator-prey response. And then I think you're in trouble.
The reality of being in the lair of the bear is that it's humbling. Called brown bears, they vary in color from blonde to black. With their trademark hump, brown bears are genetically the same as grizzlies. The only difference is their enormous size. At over 1,200 pounds, a large male can weigh twice as much as a grizzly. and they can clock in at 35 miles per hour, which is why you should never run from a bear. Spring brings bear weather, cool and rainy. After they come out of hibernation, they gather around the sedge flats. Always in survival mode, bears feast on the high-protein plant life. Following its nose, a bear uses its strong claws to dig for clams. Cracking it open, it savors the treat. Up and down the Katmai coast, a network of trails forged by bears over the years leads to places called bear rubs, where scent acts as a calling card.
Bears scent mark in their territory. They don't mark their territory in the sense of a dog, like marking the corner of their yard. They mark their presence in a place. All along this meadow, there are different spots like this where bears scent mark. And these trails coming into the rub, each male bear that comes along here, they'll step in the same track year after year. They've got scent glands in the bottom of their feet. So as they're walking, they'll twist their feet. And if you look into these footprints, you can actually see the grass is twisted. And then they'll walk up. They'll typically urinate here and then stand and rub. Quite often they'll chew. You can see where they've chewed here and they've chewed over here on this wood. And then they'll walk away.
If you see an adult female in May or June, chances are a male is in close proximity to the object of its infatuation. The males know their job is to breed. Using scent, they seek out a receptive mate. For the females, it's too early, so there's a whole lot of chasing going on.
A female will run and move away from a male if she's not receptive. And they'll typically run a distance, stop, run a distance and stop as these males are pursuing them. Quite often they'll allow the male to come right up and play with them and be right there with them. And if they're not receptive, they'll sit down.
The larger the male, the more likely the opportunity to breed. And the big boys of Katmai strut their stuff. Many have battle scars to go along with the honor. Females are promiscuous. A litter of cubs may have more than one father. Beyond breeding, they love to play. As these powerful animals wrestle, it can look like a fight. But today, it's a peaceful exchange. In this land of the midnight sun, where daylight can exceed 20 hours, the bear watching can go on and on. The coast of Katmai National Park in Alaska isn't the only place to walk among the bears. The park covers over 4 million acres of glacial carved valleys, towering mountains, and crystal clear lakes. In this wild and remote spot, float planes ferry people to Brooks Camp on the shores of Lake Naknek in the interior of the park. This small developed area with a lodge, campground, and enclave of cabins is the only place to stay. It's also a jumping-off point for backpackers heading out to explore the wilderness. Katmai is also a land of active volcanoes. 23 miles away, the Valley of 10,000 Smokes is a major destination. It's the site of the largest eruption of the 20th century. The 1912 blast of Novarupta left behind an enormous flow of lava.
The main bulk of the sheet that we see is primarily a flow deposit. It burst into the air perhaps 100,000 feet vertically up, at some point lost energy and fell back to Earth and came roaring down the valley.
A lookout point gives a grand overview of the scale of the flow. A series of deep gashes in the earth were formed by rushing waters after the main event. A river continues to cut through the layers of rock. Along the valley floor, you get a better perspective of the depth of the flow.
The three different flows came into place throughout the course of the valley, stacking on top of each other, and it's about 80 feet thick here. It gets a lot thicker, perhaps as much as 700 feet thick around Novarupt vent itself.
To get closer to the vent requires a challenging trek over rugged terrain. The Valley of 10,000 Smokes is a dramatic reminder that nature is a work in progress. This area is also a well-known sports fisherman's paradise. Anglers chase rainbow trout, where it's catch and release. Only an occasional bear wanders into camp until late June and July, when anglers aren't the only fishers. No matter the season, the first stop is the park's visitor center for mandatory bear school.
This is a bag here, which is a good example. It didn't have any food in it, but was set down and left unattended while somebody ran up from the beach, asked a question, and by the time they got back down, a bear had gotten into their bag. Bears are curious about pretty much anything in their environment, so carry everything with you, don't set it down.
Bears begin to gather along the Brooks River when the sockeye salmon begin a massive run. Hundreds of thousands of fish make a journey inland from the ocean to reproduce and spawn. Swimming upstream, they hit the falls and pile up. Fish are jumping at a time when the bears are ramping up for winter, creating one of the biggest concentrations of brown bears in the world. All told, more than 70 bears will venture here over the season. Visitors who come to the feast aren't disappointed.
Bears, although we think of them as fishermen, aren't very good at catching fish, and the bears actually have a lot easier time when there's lots and lots of fish around. Most years, the salmon run is so large that there is enough. It's more a question of whether or not the bears can tolerate close enough proximity.
To keep the sheer number of bears and humans apart, the Park Service built viewing platforms. Brooks Camp can get up to 350 visitors a day. You might be surprised at who else is looking on. Adult brown bears don't usually climb trees, but with so many other bears around, this tree is a safe haven for a pair of cubs while their mother is out fishing. As bears take time out to eat their catch, others stand by for an opening near the falls.
There's a lot of competition among bears for space and opportunity. There is the occasional year when there aren't enough salmon, and there tends to be a major social reorganization among the bears, and we have the occasional very exciting summer when that happens.
This mother bear catches a fish, but she teaches her cubs a lesson in life. She makes them work to get it away from her. With the salmon runs, bears are all over the place. There's a good chance of encountering one while fishing or hiking or just moving about. The park advises everyone to be bear aware.
The bears have grown up here. The people that have been coming here, some of the same people have been seeing the same bears, for year after year after year. The bears are used to people and the people are used to bears, which can be both good and bad. In this case, it's good.
While bears fear each other, they're not afraid of much else. Being at Brooks Camp is an exercise in modifying your own behavior, because you're not the biggest, strongest species. Whether the bears are feasting at the falls, digging for clams along the coast, or just being bears, the chance to observe these powerful creatures at close range is extraordinary. Katmai offers some of the best bear viewing of any national park.